Berak Hussain is a registered psychotherapist practicing in Medical University Clinic in Canada. She has a BA in psychology and a master's in educational counseling from the University of Ottawa. She's also known as the Muslim Counsellor and is a passionate public speaker in the Muslim mental health, social justice, Islamic issues, and poetry. She speaks on a variety of Islamic psychological issues, bringing the content, connection, and misconceptions around Islam and mental health and Islam and women. She has worked locally and internationally on a variety of mental health initiatives, working tirelessly to break the stigma around the topic within the community through TV, documentaries, shows, and implementing wellness programs with charity groups in Iraq.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Thank you for coming. We've had a particularly warm evening, I noticed tonight in London. Usually it's much chillier than that, but definitely not as chilly as it can be in Canada, where we hit the minus 30s sometimes, right? It's hard to imagine. So mental health is something we've been talking about, alhamdulillah, for the last few years, and there's been a lot of awareness around it. And part of my interest of coming into this field, what motivated me very young, had to do with listening to people's stories when I was in school. So it was quite interesting as a high schooler, listening to my friends' heartbreaks and hearing their stories of losing family and just the challenges like that. And I recall sharing these with my mom, with permission of my friends, of course. It wasn't confidential back then. And my mother always told me, it sounds like you enjoy listening to people's stories. Just be careful not to take on too much, as it can be quite heavy, because I would be very emotional listening to my friends' stories. So I recall early on that I was always engaging with people's stories, and it made sense to somehow incorporate that as a career path. However, coming from a traditional Iraqi family, what do you think my family wanted me to go into? Either medicine or engineering. All right, it's pretty common within, I think, the greater Muslim community, right? Our families kind of gears towards that because nothing else supposedly exists in between, right? So I was gearing towards medicine because I just couldn't deal with numbers. But apparently studying pre-med also included some kind of numbers and organic chemistry, inorganic chemistry, biochemistry. So heading into university, I was advised by previous medical students who'd gone down that path, well, why don't you take psychology and the pre-medical courses, then you could apply for medical school after, because it's different from here. We have to do 4 years undergrad and then apply to medical school to get in or not. So that's what I did. I did a psychology with science courses degree, heading towards that path. And little did I know how challenging those courses would be, of course, and quickly realized there's no way that I would get into medical school because that wasn't my strength. Early on, I also recognized that whatever abilities and interests you have, that's what you should pursue. And I find that a lot of our parents don't really look at that. And I see that now as a practicing clinician where people come in, students rather, come in and they're quite struggling with that pathway because they're doing what their parents are asking them to do, not necessarily their strengths and their interests. So we want to nurture that. So that's an early advice in the talk here as parents and even those who are studying. Find something that you're passionate about, that you're interested in, that you're good at, because then it won't feel like a job later on, right? And you'll be quite good at it. Inshallah, you can succeed in it. So alhamdulillah, I did do that. And I quickly realized, like I said, I'm not going to be heading into the medical field, but I'll be doing, inshallah, mental health and psychology, as I found a degree where I would enjoy and really excel at. Alhamdulillah, I did, because again, that was my area of interest. So alhamdulillah, I was able to do that, finish university degree with that and graduate studies, but also in our backgrounds, we also have to have a registration like lawyers and medical doctors to be part of a registered body. So that was one aspect of the work that I was doing. Challenges there were there were hardly any Muslims. Hardly any Muslims I noticed in that background. And I was, of course, the only muhajjaba wearing hijab in that field. And the usual stuff that we get in terms of, how to do handshakes with mahrams and things like that. That's always been the struggle, even into the world of work today, right? We'll talk about that in a little bit later. My public speaking and advocacy, that was something that perhaps many people don't know much about, but that was something I was doing since I was a kid. Coming from a traditional family, I wasn't allowed to do much extracurricular activities except for academic stuff, and we had public speaking competitions, and it did in the third language, Français. So we did the concours d'art oratoire, so the public speaking competitions. That was the one thing my dad allowed me to do as an extracurricular activity. Alhamdulillah, I enjoyed that and I did fairly well, and that helped me move into spaces as a female with a hijab that I didn't really find anybody else doing that. So doing these public speaking competitions at the provincial level was pretty cool and motivating and encouraging for a young woman in hijab, and being able to talk about topics of interest and topics that are relevant, and again, being able to represent. That boosted up my confidence, and quickly people in our community noticed that, to the point that one of our community members, she's a alima as well as a scholar and a mullah, Hussain al-Bahrani, so shout out to Hussain al-Bahrani. She recognized that when you have a skill or ability as a child, you want to nurture that, and she did that. She encouraged me to be MCs of events in our Hussainiyas or at other places, so whether it was poetry or MC or giving a talk in English, because that's always an issue in our community. When it's the mother tongue, the kids lose interest, lose interest. So she quickly honed me and trained me, so to speak, just like the public speaking competitions. And that's something just grew out of high school that I was doing in the community. And it just grew professionally, so to speak, in my field. When, again, a few years ago, I noticed that we weren't really talking about mental health issues that matter in our community that are so relevant to our everyday lives. So just a natural transition to use skills that I had growing up in other areas to apply it in the field of my background. Also, studying it in university, there was hardly anything on Islamic counseling. I had to do my own research in that background. And again, back then we didn't have much loosely translated books about the nafs. That was the only thing I was able to connect it to. But mashallah, these days, there's so much now. You have full conferences, you have full journals, other practitioners in the field from a Muslim background. It's amazing where it's come now, because there's more awareness, and also there's more encouragement. And I encourage folks who have an interest in spirituality, in psychology, in medicine, in health, to see how you can combine it. It's a wonderful way to serve our community and the imam of our time, right? So inshallah, this can also inspire folks, and more men too. Also, I find we need more men in the fields of mental health. Mashallah, there are more women I find who are interested in that, but there is now more interest from the men. So we want to encourage men also in that. So that's what started my path, so to speak. There's obviously a lot more to it. That's just the gist of it. In terms of the challenges faced, again, when we're working in the world, the professional life, especially when you're working not just in the Muslim community, but outside of it, the usual challenges of the handshake, or people perhaps not hiring you because you're wearing the hijab, you look visibly Muslim. I guess I was one of those blessed people who didn't necessarily encounter that, because people wanted my skill set and the fact that I was from a different background for the clientele, the international students that I usually work with. So alhamdulillah, I was blessed that way. That's not to say it was easy at first. It's always challenging when you graduate to find something in your field specifically. And the statistics back then, where it would take 3 to 5 years to find your career job, I was right on there. Third year mark, alhamdulillah, I was able to find the long-term work that I'm doing now. But before that, it was more contract work to build up your experience in the field. That was interesting, again, as a muhajjaba, because when clients would come, I was working in HR as well as employment counseling. It was interesting people's responses when they see somebody who's veiled. The challenge, how I work with that, is I don't focus on the fact that I'm wearing a veil. I'm focusing on my skills and my abilities and my confidence in my work to help the person in front of me. The client's going to pick up on that energy, but if you're worried and constantly thinking about, oh, what are they thinking about my hijab? Are they thinking I'm good enough? You know, what are their thoughts? I find that we kind of create our own barriers that way. And of course there are barriers. I'm not saying there aren't when folks meet you for the first time, and I find that too with clients sometimes when I come into the waiting room and then you see some clients who may be Muslim or their names are, as soon as they see you with the hijab, they're like, oh God, she's gonna know all the haram that I've done, you know, and they're worried about that. But that, alhamdulillah, that eases away when we get into the counseling session and, you know, we focus on the issue, focus on the skills, focus on the coping strategies, and they feeling safe. You know, then the other haram stuff comes out, you know, we deal with that too. Because that has an impact on their well-being and their mental health if they are doing things that they find harmful to themselves, right? So these are some of the challenges encountering this field. Now, the public speaking part has always been interesting because there's a pushback from male speakers. This evening, inshallah, we're going to be very upfront. We're going to be honest. That's the point of these types of events. We're not going to sugarcoat all the great stuff, but we're also going to speak about the challenges, which include mansplaining, which include aggression, which could include physical violence as well, in any of the fields that we're in. Condescending attitudes towards women, especially women of knowledge and expertise and skills. And mashallah, we have a panel here of women highly qualified in each of our areas, right? It's interesting from a psychological point of view that when a certain type of male encounters a highly skilled or expert woman in her field, there's a pushback there. It depends on the personality, the ego, and the confidence of the person. I'm speaking from experience, personal, professional, but also from the stories that I've heard over the years in the community. So like we said, we want to break barriers tonight. We're not here bashing males or females. No, there's a love and respect all around, because with these types of events, with respect and love, with both genders, then we can work on defeating the stereotypes and the struggles that we are experiencing. We can't as a Muslim community move forward if these issues are not tackled tactfully, with taste, but together from both the males and the females. So some of the challenges I've encountered, such things as a woman has no place to speak in a Hussainiya masjid or on the Mambad, no matter what her background. Or speaking in front of men. Stay in your own city, stay in your own center, stay in your own home, and just organize your events. So this kind of attitude, perhaps it was threatening that they're seeing women speaking more, taking more of their positions, perhaps, who knows? But there was definitely this type of arrogant attitude. Now, that was quite shocking at first. I'm like, but why? I mean, I'm gonna be able to address some issues. I'm talking about things from my area of expertise. It's not about taking over a man's role here. It's not about that. We're talking about things that are specific to women, perhaps, or in this case, mental health. It's for everybody. It's not just for males or females, right? So things like that. So there's this kind of attitude that I've found over the years. But alhamdulillah, over the years, that has also changed, perhaps, opened up a little bit more. So we encourage more folks, if you have an ability or a talent or a passion, if you can contribute, don't let these challenges stop you along the way. So another challenge that's interesting when it comes to being a mental health practitioner is the type of work that it is can be quite draining. Listening to heartbreak, listening to folks who are dealing with depression, anxiety, having thoughts of suicide, stories of domestic violence, abuse, not just from women, of course, from men everywhere. These can be quite heavy. Right? It is a heavy job, but it's also a blessed job in the sense, if you're in a position where you can help somebody and support somebody, that's amazing, mashallah, right? We also have to be careful setting boundaries because it can definitely drain you. So that's, I find, a challenge in this field, especially this is my 11th year working in this field now, alhamdulillah. Can imagine how heavy that can be on somebody. And so you have to learn how to manage, take care of your own health, self-care. Can't really help others if you don't take care of yourself. So I find that can be one of the challenges in our field, and learning how to balance. Now, I've spoken a lot about my professional. I'll jump into a little bit of the personal as well. So being a mother and a family, that can be challenging as well when you have work, and then you have part 2 work when you get home, right? So the usual house stuff and learning how to balance and manage that in the family. So that's really important to learn how to balance that. And if you have support within the family and the community, that can help a lot. But definitely as a working mom, a lot of us can relate to that as working parents as well. It can be challenging. We have to learn, again, how to balance that, how to ask for support. A lot of us think that asking for support is a sign of weakness, perhaps, right? That you're not a super mom as you once thought you were, or everybody perhaps looks at you like that, and then you feel like, oh, I can't ask for help, or I can't delegate. Yes, you can, right? Alhamdulillah, God has given us abilities and talents and skills, but we also have a limit, right? And we have to learn what our individual limits are so that we can ask for support or say no, or, putting boundaries around ourselves. So I'm just going to quickly wrap up here in terms of what advice would I give other women or men who are following a similar path, whether it's mental health work or advocacy or public speaking. I'm absolutely going to say go for it. And again, back to the initial idea we were talking about in terms of finding your skills, your strengths, your abilities, what you're passionate about, what you love, nurture that and go for it. Even if it's a field that's a little bit maybe not seen as favorably within our community, as long as it's within the halal bounds, of course. Nurture that and go for it. Talk to people who are in the field, network. Find out more about what you need to do to get there, if that's something you're interested in doing. And talk to your family. If they're not really open to it, perhaps you can get that professional to talk to them about what this field is if they're not too sure what it's all about. But definitely encourage more men to get into this field and to continue encouraging my sisters as well to follow that path, inshallah.